right, welcome back to another episode of AGI Schools Out Saturdays. I have a teacher with us today. We've had some other people from the education space recently, but I have Patty Oshier, who is not only a middle school teacher, but she is the wife of one of my colleagues and good friends, John Oshier. He said, my wife has been using AI in the workspace. And so, Patty, what we're doing is we're just kind of talking about how AI is currently being leveraged by teachers and by students. And I feel like these changes are coming fast and nobody really knows what to do. And so they like to hear from other professionals who are using these technologies, either fighting against them or using them. And so why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and then we'll take it from there.
I kind of fell into teaching by accident, which sounds like a weird thing to say, but totally did. This is my fifth year teaching. I taught fifth and sixth grade different subjects, but this year I have been teaching seventh and eighth grade middle school language arts. I actually teach currently at a charter school. I had been at a traditional public school prior, but this is my first year at a charter school.
Awesome. And language arts, that's near and dear to my heart. So I fell in love with large language models and the whole AI thing when ChatGPT first launched, because I realized like one of my deficits in school was I didn't really take that well to STEM classes, math, physics, chemistry. Those were difficult for me. And now all of a sudden here's a computer interface that having strong language skills is actually a major asset for. And so I absolutely have dove headfirst into this technology because of that. Do you find that that there are students out there or teachers who are maybe not as mathematically inclined but more language inclined that really like this technology?
I myself hate math with a passion. I do not want to teach any level of math higher than like third grade. And I think AI has completely helped change my lesson planning.
Amen. You and I are going to get along really well. So tell us a little bit about what that looks like for you.
So our school uses an entire lesson planning through Google Sheets. So we actually have to link every single thing we do in our classroom, all of our slides, any YouTube videos, pretty much every single thing, our worksheets. And as most people know, education has a lot of deficits in budgeting. So curriculum standards are sometimes falling short. So I will use AI to create all of my guided practice questions leading up into their actual independent practice. I will sometimes use it to help build our independent practice worksheets because they're just not at the depth of knowledge the students need to be at. So, like, they'll be at a lower level than what the state standards require them to be at. So, I use them to help make them more difficult. And the funny thing about AI is you can actually use your AI to create them to be AI resistant. So, it's kind of one of those weird, like, ironic things that you're using AI to make it be less usable in AI, but that's one of the features that a lot of the things have is you can make it AI resistant, so your students have a harder time putting that into AI.
Yes, I have access to MagicSchool AI because I had one of their salespeople on, and I was trying to create. Essentially, what I was trying to do was create a survey for large language models but I wanted to frame it like the large language model was a student. So I wanted to ask it to create a go-to-market plan for monetizing a podcast, right? But I didn't want, while I was creating the prompt, more or less, I didn't want the AI to write it for another AI. I wanted to write it like a student project so that it would approach it more in a humanistic way. And when I went to I started with Gemini, and then when I went to Magic School to improve upon it because it's a ed tech platform, I saw that it was like, do you want me to make this AI resistant? And I thought, wow, that's really interesting. So how does it do that? Do you know
I
any of the
honestly
ways
don't
that
know,
it?
like, the algorithms or what it does to make that where it's harder to input. I'm not even sure if it actually does work because kids are getting smarter and smarter at trying to, utilize the AI to get their assignments done, so I'm not really honestly sure how it works, but I should dive a lot deeper into that.
Yeah, that's very interesting. If you find anything out about that, share it with me because I would love to know. But again, you're getting at the algorithmic level, and there's your math people. They can figure out how to make it AI resistant, and we language people will just leverage that. How do you see students using it? Are your students not supposed to use it?
We definitely do not encourage them to use it because a lot of in ELA is writing and coming up with your own prompts or responses. So we don't really want them to use it. Um, we kind of recommend they don't, but I know they've used it quite a bit in like music. They've created their whole digital slideshows, and it's worked really well on the music front, but not necessarily in the ELA front.
Do you know what platforms they use for that?
Um,
Like
I
Suno,
just
11 Labs?
it sounds something. I can actually look into it and get back to you on that.
Yeah.
It's like almost like a Google slideshow, it kind of looks like, but they can input videos and all different cool things on that.
Yeah, they have their own little tech hacks. Like I know that a lot of them use CapCut for video editing because TikTok use CapCut. That's a Chinese video editing model that I tried one time. It only likes shorts because kids only create like 30-second clips. So I had a big clip and I had to pay for the platform, and it ended up like the Chinese company charged my credit card like 100 times in 2 hours,
Oh my
and
gosh,
I
that's
was
crazy.
like,
My
yeah,
son
this is
uses
why.
CapCut.
Yeah. Oh, they do. They all do for TikTok. I actually got
Yeah.
in an argument with my daughter because she's having trouble with her Wi-Fi because of the VPN she has on her phone, so she can use Snapchat and TikTok on while she's at high school. Like, is what's screwing it up. But I'm like, you just need to take that VPN off there. And she's arguing with me that she won't be able to use her phone in school, and I'm saying you'll be able to use it for anything the school wants you to use it for on their Wi-Fi. You just won't be able to
Correct.
watch Snapchat.
My son's gotten in trouble for downloading different VPNs on his school device in order to get around their blockers. So totally understand that.
Well, let's take this time to educate those who may not understand that in the education space as to what a VPN is. Do you,
I
can
am
you
not tech
articulate
savvy
that?
enough. I am totally not tech savvy enough to tell you what it is. All I know is it kind of reroutes their internet through like a different, we'll call it a portal because I don't really know a better use for the word. And so it kind of reroutes around all of the safe blockers that they have installed. The other way I found students doing this actually is quite creative. We use Google Classroom in our school, and they will open their Google up as if they are creating their own thing. And then they'll put YouTube videos inside that where you link in order to watch YouTube videos, but appear that they're on the Google Classroom. And it kind of bypasses all of the Hapara, which is the digital screening that we use to see what's on their computer. So it'll just show they're in Google Classroom when in fact they're just watching YouTube videos.
Ah,
So they're
man,
getting
I
sneakier
mean,
and sneakier on how to get around anything you do. And you can't really block a Google Classroom because that's our entire teaching platform we use. So they're definitely getting more creative.
yes, a VPN is a virtual private network. So basically it's a shadow account on your phone or on your laptop that does hack around systems and doesn't get identified or doesn't get blocked as a student account. And that's very interesting. Do you guys use Google Notebook LM within?
Um, we use Google Classroom, and it's like each class is linked in this. I was more actually used to Canvas. That's what we used for years, which is also
Yep.
a teaching platform. And when I switched to the charter school I currently work at, they use Google Classroom. So it was a whole new thing I had to learn. But you link all of the assignments, and in the assignments, you can link worksheets, you can link their videos, you can link all of the things under one thing. So it'll say narrative week 24, and in it I can link it to the pair, which is an assessment platform. I can link it to a Google Doc. I can link it to any links I need, and they can all be in one little spot.
So is it saving you time?
The Google Classroom or
Yes.
AI in
The
general?
the AI
Oh,
infused.
100%. I can basically I'm like, "Oh, my lesson plan's falling short this week and I really need a whole lot of things." I can type it in and it'll give me YouTube videos that I can link in my mini lesson. I can tell it to create all of my slides, put in the state standard, put in how many slides I want, put in how many guided practice questions I want. And for those of you who don't know, guided practice questions is you do a mini instructional lesson where you're basically teaching and then you slowly gradually release them to do their own work. So you do guided practice questions together as a whole class. And then some teachers take it a step further and do gradual release, which means you kind of go around and see which students are still struggling. And if they're struggling, you help them out, give them a few more practice. If they're not struggling, you put them onto independent practice. So gradual is slowly releasing them. Guided practice is the whole class works together to solve the problems on the board. And it can give me guided practice questions for almost anything.
Yes, that is awesome. There's actually a professor that I had on here from Purdue who teaches philanthropy, but she's kind of an elective, so she has had some software kids in there, and she had them build a large language model. I mean, Purdue has some resources, right? So, like, not many teachers get to have their students build a large language model for them. But they built a large language model that actually walks you through the writing process of an essay rather than writing an essay for you, which I thought that's ingenious because I was always a great writer. I'm not great at a lot of things, but I was a great writer. But I was always a first draft, final copy, lazy writer when I was in middle school and high school, right? And so I'd have like A for content and then a C or D for punctuation and all the other things that so this actually takes you through like what's your thesis statement going to be. Okay, now how are you going to do that research? What hell, I can't even list the proper way to write an essay, but I know that there are steps to it. So I do feel like that type of a technology would help kids who struggle with writing to write better and maybe even make good writers great writers because it would force them to use a process that has been vetted for creating a better output no matter how good of a writer you are.
For all of our writing, we do something either called a Q3E or a PDE. It's kind of like a graphic organizer. And it has like, what is the question? What type of essay are you writing? Argumentative, informative, persuasive, or just a narrative story is technically a slightly different graphic organizer. But, and then it's got your thesis, and then it breaks it down into your three main points. That's the three. And then the E is the evidence that you're pulling through. And so that kind of helps them as well. It doesn't really utilize AI as much, but you can input a lot of that into AI to help you come up with like your writing prompts.
Yeah, I like that. It is a great thought partner. I mean, I find in my work that the divergent thinking process going into AI, no matter whether it's a project or a way of managing people or whatever, if I go in and throw ideas at it, it will throw ideas back at me. And I may not even use any of the ideas that ChatGPT came up with or Claude came up with, right? But I do formulate new ideas that I would never have had I not had that conversation with AI.
I agree. It kind of like for me, it also kind of unlocks some critical thinking skills because I have to figure out how can I word this differently for it to give me exactly what I need it to give me. And so sometimes I have to manipulate how I'm wording things in order for it to even give me what I need. And sometimes it gives me things like you said that I don't even think of. And I'm like, that's genius. I might use this later.
Yeah, and you know what? That brings up something that I have started to really explore, which is if you look in the workplace, and I'm sure it happens in the classroom as well, right? Like a lot of times you will have the difference between I think a really good manager and a not so good manager is that a good manager meets everyone kind of where they are and articulates the goals in a way that resonates with that employee, right? But not every manager does that well, right? And it happens in relationships and everything else. But I think that prompt engineering, what it's actually teaching us is how to communicate with somebody else when you want them to do something. Like define the role that you're asking them to perform, tell them what good looks like, and be very clear. Make sure that you provide the context or the resources that they need to actually complete that. And then send them off and you won't be surprised because they did something that wasn't what you were thinking. The same thing happens when you're trying to prompt an AI, right?
You just described a classroom actually in entirety of meeting your students where they are. But yeah, I was like, for 100%. Like, in order to get your student to do what you need, you have to provide all of those instructions, like you just said. So we go through what we're expected. We do our guided practice. We have them actually restate their learning objectives. So I know that they know what they're supposed to do. And then I provide exemplars or what it should look like when it's good. So an AI will actually, I shouldn't be confessing this because if my student watches it later, but I actually have AI help me write the exemplars of what the perfect should look like from a student at their level. Because obviously, if I wrote an exemplar, it's going to be totally different than what a seventh grader is going to look like. So I will make sure it prompts it to write similar to more what a seventh grader would write versus someone with a college degree.
And to me, that's magic. That's great. I mean, I've used this example before. Okay, adults don't think like kids. When I was a little kid, my parents let me watch Jaws when I was like 7, and I was petrified of the ocean for about 40 years and needed a psychiatrist. They thought it was a stupid movie. The shark looked fake. Like, what's the big deal, right? Then when I was like 12 or 13, Scarface came out, which has a couple of gory scenes, but like it's a 90-minute, well, no, it's more than it's like a 2 hour movie that pretty much is like the almost a biography of what it's like to be a Cuban immigrant for the first 45 minutes to an hour. Like it was boring as hell. So I had to go to a friend's house and watch it. I didn't even make it through it. They thought that the two gory scenes in it where people got either chainsawed up or shot in the head were going to completely impact me because they were thinking through an adult's mind, not through a child's mind. And I think that that's one of the things that AI gives us the ability to do, which is here's my audience, here's my end user, whether you're talking about marketing, teaching, managing employees. Here is the person that I'm trying to reach. Here is how here's their reading level, here's their efficacy level. Like, how do I speak to them in a way that is going to resonate with them rather than what's in my head and how I think about things?
Exactly. It helps for me, honestly. I'm going to be very sad when my kids are all grown because having all of the teens in my house, they have more than helped shape how I teach in my classroom. I know all of the nice little things they say off TikTok or anything else long before my kids even start saying it in my classroom. I'm like, when they're gone, I'm going to have to actually like watch these YouTube videos and figure it out on my own. And that's going to be a whole lot harder.
How old are your kids?
I have an 18-year-old, a 16-year-old, a 15-year-old, and a 13-year-old.
Wow, you've got your hands
So
full.
So they teach me long before they usually wind up in the 7th, 8th grade classes, and so I know the stuff before. So when they say it to me, I'll say stuff back, and they're like, "How do you know that?"
Uh-huh.
And that's gonna be a total deficit when they're gone. I'm not sure I'll have to actually, like I said, get on and watch the videos and figure it out on my own.
So how much do they leverage AI?
My own children,
Yeah.
my oldest uses it a lot, probably
Yeah.
more than he should, especially he's big into conspiracy theories, and so he'll type stuff into AI or, and kinda look at different rabbit holes he can go down. And the other thing we have in our house, which I had a love-hate relationship with, because 'cause I'm like, "I'm gonna wind up on the internet, someone's gonna hack it," but we have the Google Home system in ours, and so they like to ask it questions and see what its response is and then go compare it to, like, whatever comes up on their phone or other things. So they actually will compare different AI platforms sometimes.
I love that. I got that out of my daughter. So ChatGPT, I find ChatGPT is very sycophantic. It tells people what they want to hear. They're really going for the consumer market, whereas Anthropic's Claude is mostly the enterprise paying for, and you can't continuously tell people every idea is a great idea if you're going for the business sector because enough people will lose money on that they will stop using your product, right? So my daughter was using ChatGPT, and then she came in to ask me something about Claude, and I was like, when did you switch when did you switch to Claude? And she said, well, ChatGPT makes stuff up all the time and just tells me what I want to hear. And Claude seems to be a lot better model to use. I don't remember how she articulated it in her 15-year-old way, but I was like, I'm so proud. My 15-year-old is model surfing and actually figuring out how to leverage these different models for the things that they're good at. Because if I want to create a comic strip, ChatGPT is awesome for that, right? Or if I want an easy user interface for somebody who's brand new, like an older person or a younger person who's brand new to AI, then ChatGPT is kind of the iPhone of AI. But it has a lot of things about it that I don't like at all.
My neighbor, he is actually works at Purdue as a professor in some sort of computer programming. And he said the thing about ChatGPT is it's not like constantly learning like other platforms.
Uh-huh.
Other platforms are constantly learning and growing and moving. And he said ChatGPT is kind of a little more closed circuit. And so that's might be why it feeds you the same answers over and over because it's not learning as it goes, where like Copilot or Gemini learns as it goes.
So do your kids like what do they find the Google Home thing? How does it compare to other things?
Google Home does the really weird things when you ask it questions. Like we asked it the other night, totally political, but we asked, I think my son said something like, "Is Trump a bad person?" And it came up with this generic response about how it could not um, speak a political view, how it could not do cases that were still pending or alleged. But then a few days later, he asked it the same question and it gave a very different response. So he was like, "Oh, so now Google's learning." But it was kind of weird that 2 days apart, it had very different responses. And sometimes Google will literally just tell you something that doesn't even make sense to what it asked you. It'll give you totally different, and you're like, "That's not even what I asked." So Google Home is definitely not the smartest in my opinion, on asking it things. I'm not really sure how it is different than, like, what you'd use Gemini on your phone it versus the home system, but the home comes up with a different answer than Gemini does on your phone, like,
That's very
totally different
interesting.
responses. Um, and I'm not really sure the reasons behind that.
That's very interesting. Yeah, I don't have any of those home systems, but I have considered them. And the glasses are coming. I wonder what the classroom's going to be like when everybody's wearing a device that's connected to AI. Probably the schools are going to try to block it, but I'll tell you a funny story. So I did a class for some students in Lafayette from Lafayette Central Catholic, a small group through Greater Lafayette Chamber of Commerce and SkyPack on how to build a custom GPT marketing agent that would have the tone, voice, and like all the standards so that you could basically create copyright that was on brand using AI. And then you become, in my opinion, the future of marketing and things like that is everybody is kind of an editor. You have all these writers that will put things out for you. And the better you make those LLMs at writing, the less editing you actually have to do. But you still retain like the option to write things if you want to, but you can also produce a whole lot more content that's on brand. So long story short, like they were trying to figure out how to leverage AI in this thing and they're all blocked from everything except for Google. And so I'm going around, I'm trying to show them all this stuff on Chat GPT and 11 Labs. And one kid is on Grok, XAI, Elon Musk's platform, right? And I looked at his computer and I was like, "You're on Grok." He goes, "Yeah, the school hasn't figured out they need to block Grok. They just block Chat GPT."
Yeah, that's a common issue too, is it's so it changes way faster than, like, even the schools can keep up with IT. So we're constantly, like I said, they're constantly finding new things, ways around it. Their kids are so smart. Like, I know people are always putting down kids and saying, like, they're bunch like, I hear all the time, "Well, our literacy rates are down." And I'm like, "Yeah, because we're not, like, formally writing, but they know how to correct it when they type it in." But they find ways around everything. They are so much smarter than people give them credit for.
Well, and I mean, it's kind of a scary time because this technology is advancing really fast. So we're really not sure what the economy is going to look like. I mean, when my daughter asked me, what should I go into? I say, well, healthcare is going to be fine for a long, long time because until we have a whole generation raised by robots, like from the time they're babies, most people are not going to want robot doing their healthcare stuff. So that vertical is going to be wide open for a long time. AI law will be huge. There's going to be lawsuits around artificial intelligence, everything from copyright to misuse and all that. So those two are big. But outside of that, unless you want to be like an AI scientist, yeah, then those guys are getting like 8-figure salaries. But outside of that, it's like I don't know. I don't know what work is going to look like, but I do know that if you know how to leverage this technology and think critically, that's where I argue. I don't think it's actually repressing critical thinking. I think it's changing critical thinking. I think design thinking and problem solving and knowing what question to ask, like that mixed with EQ is kind of the skill set of the future.
Yeah, I think it was like I said, I have to manipulate how I word things into it to give it to feedback what I need. So I would agree with you that it does definitely help critical thinking in that aspect or area.
Yes. Yeah, and there's been some studies. MIT has done some studies that say that it represses critical thinking, and I'm just not sure. I honestly like it allows you to do so many things so fast. Sometimes I have to take a midday break because I have like 10 projects going, and they're all AI driven, and I get just a headache because I'm thinking so much and so fast. I'm like, okay, let's pretend like we're in Spain and take a siesta and then get back into this stuff. I do think it allows you to be lazy, but the kids that are lazy and that cheat, like I was one of them. Okay, I'm not putting them down, but they're going to do that with or without this technology.
Oh yeah. Even on tests, we'll find them like passing notes. It is kind of funny though, because one day I had given them a paper test. It was a benchmark assessment to see where they were with conventions, and I was actually gone for the day. And I came back and most of them had scored like 100%. And so I was like, "Hey, we're going to retake this again on paper without our computers and we're going to see." And everyone's like, "Ms. Osher, we cheated." I'm like, "Yeah, I knew." I was like, when you're getting 100% on misplaced modifiers and I know none of you even know misplaced modifiers, I know you cheated." But it was so funny. They all fessed up. They're like, "Yeah, we did." And one of them was like, "Yeah, they unblocked this and they didn't block this. And so that's what we use." I was like, "Well, thank you for your honesty." Then none of them wanted to retake the test. They were like, "We cheated. We will be honest." So I had to basically invalidate all of the scores. But I'm not even sure where I was going with this. But yeah, I was like, they were smart enough to know. And one of them even said, "I purposely got a couple wrong so it would throw you off." I was like, "Yeah, but you got the ones right that I knew you were going to get wrong." So, but it was so funny because it's like, "I purposely put a couple wrong answers so it would throw you off." I'm like, okay. So they really do think things through a lot more than we think they do.
Well, and here's my argument for why we should be introducing kids to this technology at a young age. I think that's a perfect learning example. So, Anthropic, which creates Claude, they release a lot of their red team stuff when they try to see if they can get these models to do bad things. And they released a paper that said that if you tell a model, now, I'm going to use very human terms for this because I don't know the scientific terms for it, and it was kind of explained in a human way. But if you tell a model, absolutely do not cheat, period, right? Like, and then you give it a bunch of code to work on, it will eventually cheat on it. They try to find shortcuts, just like kids. The models are like kids. If you tell it absolutely do not do this and it does, then it triggers something that it almost self-identifies as a malicious model after that, and it has bad behavior everywhere else. If you tell it, try not to, but if you do, it's okay to cheat once in a while. But let us know, or like it just does. That's not best practices. But if you have to do it, then when it does it, it does not have subsequent malicious activity. Like it doesn't identify as a bad model. And I that has a lot. I mean, if you look at that in like child rearing and kids being what you tell them they are, or how they can take on identities based on one action or one life thing. I mean, there's a lot of similarity there. I would use things like that in my classroom if I was a teacher in K through 12 to explain the underworkings of these models, because my biggest fear with the younger generations in these models is that they develop relationships with them that are unhealthy. And the more you can show, not at a mathematical algorithmic level, but at a basic programming level, this is a tool. This is how it acts when you do this. This is how it does things over here. The more it becomes a machine to them and not some kind of a sentient thing, because we as humans have a tendency to think when something talks to us the same way we talk to each other, that it's a lot more like us than it may be.
I agree with that. There was actually that weird movie a few years back that people were like, "That would never happen," where he falls in love with his
Her.
computer. Yes, and I watched that and I was thinking, "Nobody would ever be like this," and then now you hear stories where they are like that, and I was like,
Yes.
"We've kind of lost that ability to disconnect." So, it's crazy that you brought that up because I would have never actually thought that a few years ago, and here we are now.
Yeah, we are there. I mean, you could take Google, like you can turn Gemini on your phone and let it see. You could walk around with your phone in your pocket talking to Gemini and it seeing what's going on. Like we're 100% there with the Joaquin Phoenix Her. Do you know that they originally that ChatGPT voice got sued by Scarlett Johansson because they made it sound just like that voice in the movie Her, which she
I did
was the
not know
voice
that.
actress for? Yeah.
There
Yeah.
is an episode, I think, on Black Mirror where they, take AI to help people, like, get over grief, and they turn it into, like, this robot being, and I once again thought that would never happen, and then I heard a commercial where you can use voicemails and other sound clips to have messages from people who have passed away, and I was like, "They're really doing it, like, they're making this a thing," and I'm not really sure that that would be wholly beneficial, like, because 'cause you're still kinda holding on instead of letting go. Um, I mean, maybe it would be in some cases, but then I also hear horror stories about people using ChatGPT or other things to be their therapist and it telling them things that maybe aren't that beneficial. And so I think there are areas we probably shouldn't use AI. And I think that might be one of them.
I do not disagree with you at all. I just think that going forward, those conversations need to start at an age appropriate way in kindergarten. I When it comes to social media, I am firmly on in the camp that parents should have been more responsible with their children's social media. When it comes to AI, unfortunately, I know a lot's been put on teachers, but this is a technology that is going to change our world so much, so fast, that I do think we're going to have to rely somewhat on the U.S. education system to teach kids what appropriate and healthy interactions with this technology is.
And they do like internet safety in like 6th grade, and they focus more on like proper ways to talk to strangers, things like that. And I think you're
Mhm.
right that maybe we should be incorporating a little more of the AI and proper ways to utilize or use AI. I'm not really sure how that will look eventually, but I remember sitting through a she was actually a therapist, and it was all about how when we withhold things from children and we like say cell phones or internet usage, people lock it down and then they get to college and they have no idea what they're doing because they're either confused or they're become so addicted to it because it was withheld and it's something that they now have. And I think AI is possibly going to be like that. If we withhold it and withhold it and withhold it, then they're going to either have zero clue what's going on or they're going to become so addicted to using it that it's going to backfire. I think we need to find some middle ground.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, just like your Google Gemini example, like you could take a third grade class and be like, "Hey, look, if we ask, is Santa not is Santa real? You wouldn't want to spoil that for third graders, but if we ask, well, let's take a universal evil. Was Adolf Hitler a bad leader?" To Gemini, and you ask Grok and you ask ChatGPT, like you get all these different answers. That's called bias. What biases do you have in your life, right? So you just turn it into life lessons at a K through 6 level. Then by the time you get to middle school, you can start looking at, okay, how can we properly leverage these technologies, and how can we identify deep fakes? How can we protect the elders in our family from deep fakes and things and misinformation, right? I hate to use the word misinformation because it's so politicized, but I mean like gross misinformation. Um, like
That's
that's
actually
all going to be possible.
a newer state standard is diverse media, and one of the things that they cover is kind of like biases and how to figure out if it's relevant or irrelevant information and how to do that and how they could present you with totally true um, facts like insect population is down by X percent, raccoons eat insects, and how they're trying to make it seem raccoons are the reason the insect population is down. But what are they also not telling you? So it's what information is missing. And so I think in this case, AI would be beneficial if we allowed them to use AI because then they could research and see different aspects or various viewpoints and kind of figure out on their own what makes it relevant or not but relevant. So I think in the newer standard we're currently using, AI would have been beneficial if we were using it in the classroom to do so.
So what kind of pushback have you heard? I mean, how many teachers do you find are embracing this? What pushback have you seen at the administrative level? What does that look like?
So I luckily work for a school that very much is like utilize AI, but always make sure you're checking that it's giving you relevant things. Like if I say active and passive voice, active for those like would be the chef baked the cake. The chef is actively baking the cake. But passive would be the cake is baked by the chef. When I put in the other day for guided practice questions, it gave me very weird things. It was like the dogs were walked by 3 dogs. And I was like, it didn't really do the opposite. It was like she walked the dog, but then it was the dogs were walked by 3 dogs. And I was like, that's not really the opposite. So it gave me really weird stuff back. And obviously I was able to see it, change it, fix it. But I think some teachers need to be careful and actually checking it before they're presenting it to the students. Um, so that's but I like I said, I work for a great school that actually says use it. So we did a kind of a we'll call it a research over Christmas, we took narratives that the students had wrote and we put the Indiana rubric into different platforms and then we manually graded it and we compared to see how they differed. So we used Essay Grader AI, Magic School AI, and then just our own. And we kind of saw if there was any huge discrepancies in percentages it scored these kids. And there really wasn't a whole lot of difference. In some cases, it was only like 5%, but it was interesting that the school was like, hey, run them through these different platforms, check them yourself and see where you differ. And so they had a whole AI technology, like a competition, I guess we'll call it. I didn't enter that because I wasn't scientifically brained or maybe that's not the accurate word. I just didn't have the energy or time to spend on it at the moment. That's probably more accurate than saying I'm not science brained. Um but one of the people from our school was actually a finalist. And so it'll be interesting to see what the final projects come out of that is. But it was a huge amount of money that they offered. I think it was like $10,000 if you were able to come up with this AI project or platform. Um, so they're I'm very lucky to work for a school that actually says, "Use AI, let it help you." And so that's been nice. And there's actually some new ones I haven't tried yet that other teachers have recommended, like Teach Share was just recommended to me the other day. I haven't dived into that yet. So, like I said, it's very nice to have admin backing you and saying, "If it makes your life easier and it helps us build better students, by all means use it."
I love that. I love that. And I hope that that trickles down to the students and they start getting to use it more, because I do fear that, I had the mayor of Carmel. I live in Carmel, work in Lafayette, and I had the mayor of Carmel and the CEO of uh, Invest Hamilton County on the show, because I have three kids. One is 27, one is 23, and one is 15, and we live in Carmel in the kind of lower end of Carmel. My wife and I have both been in social work most of our lives. It's not easy for us to afford living here. It's always been so our kids could do better than us. And we thought Carmel High School would be a great way to set them up for that. And the oldest girl has her PharmD from Purdue, and her brother has a biochem undergrad from Purdue. They're both doing great. My daughter is not getting exposed to AI. And I said blatantly to the mayor and to this guy, like, I don't feel like Carmel is setting this one up for success the way they have her siblings. And, one of the pushbacks from the Invest Hamilton County guy was, well, the only people hiring for AI skills right now are like, if they're a software engineer, like building systems in AI. And I was like, bullshit. That's just not true. Like, we are using it at Phoenix Paramedic Solutions. We are looking at the end of February, investing in a Claude Teams account to empower our leadership team, reduce admin burden, and improve efficiency, maybe get rid of some third-party software, and get them more in management and service roles than doing a bunch of admin crap. Like, it's not just software engineers leveraging AI in the workforce. And by the time the kids you're teaching and my daughter get out there, having some basic AI literacy skills will be a must. Being really good with AI and good with people will be a winner type combination, in my opinion.
I would agree. You'll appreciate this funny story because it's not really, but it's definitely AI related. So if you're having a really bad day as a teacher, there's a feature on like Magic School AI that's like email generator. You could type in, your student was a stinker today. We really don't like him. He smells this and that. It will totally like you just put all your pent up aggression into this letter. And it will reword it in a family friendly way that, makes you seem much nicer than your kid sucks. And it'll reword it to send to the parent saying, hey, your student had a very rough day today. Here are some of the things he's done. What can we do to work as a team to better enable your student to learn? But you could put your pent up frustrations on your student in there and it'll reword that in a nice way. And so, you don't get fired and you keep your job. And it just gives me a laugh sometimes typing something and see what the AI generates as family friendly because it will totally censor all of your stuff out and put nice words in.
That is awesome. And I believe their CEO is going to be on the show at some point in time this year. So I want to share that story with him, because I'm sure he'll get a kick out of the
Like I
fact
said,
that
so if
teachers are
you just
loving
have
that.
had a bad day and you're like, this kid stinks, I'm so mad, you can type it in, your real feelings, and it'll reword it to much nicer. And then obviously you can edit it to what you need. But it definitely I like I said, it makes it just gives me a laugh, I guess is the best way to put it. And it turns the day kind of around because I'm like, this kid just stunk today. Like their behavior was awful. And so
That is a great
this is
use case. My
I
wife
was
would
like,
probably My wife was a teacher, and now she's a social worker, but she would probably tell you the opposite. So I use WhisperFlow. I don't type anymore. I pay $15 a month, and I just push down two buttons, and I can talk, and it transcribes it in like the way that it needs to be. Like, it'll put it as a header and everything else. So that's amazing. But there are definitely times when she has heard me in here like yelling at ChatGPT because the output is not up to the standard that I think, and I'm like, expletive, expletive, expletive. I said do this, and you keep doing this, and she will stick her head around the corner and say, "Are you really arguing at your digital girlfriend?" And so she gets a kick out of poking fun at me for that kind of thing.
I've said some not nice words to Google and she'll actually tell me that was not kind. Please do not speak to me that way. And I'm like, you are not real. You did not just tell me that.
That's the kind of stuff we have to prepare kids for, though, right? So when you have them, when you're 3, there's a new teddy bear. They're actually putting AI. They will have AI in Barbies. That company has signed contracts with ChatGPT. Eventually, your toddlers are going to be talking to their toys, and it's going to be talking
I was
back
like,
in natural
I was like,
language.
toddlers are already like very well advanced in iPad usage and everything else. So that does not shock me at all.
But we've got to teach these kids like that is not a sentient being. On the obviously that's not the word you would use for a child, but that thing that's a machine. Like it sounds like it's not, but it is. It's just a card trick. It's making you believe that it's. And so that to me is going to be one of the most important things going forward when it comes to children, rearing children, is bringing them up to realize that they're not Joaquin Phoenix and they shouldn't fall in love with the voice on the other end of their telephone.
And you'd think that we would like just know these things, but we don't. I was like, most things you are taught. You don't just automatically know things. So I would agree with you. It definitely needs to be something that's addressed.
Yeah, and I mean we assume that kids pick up a lot from what adults do. And so even if I was to look at myself, if there was a toddler in the house, like I spend all my time talking to my computer and like I laugh at it, my Claude account knows me well enough that it will like be sarcastic back to me, and I will burst out laughing while talking to the computer. And so to a child, that would seem like daddy, believes that he has a friend inside the computer that he's talking to. I'm actually laughing at the magic of the technology, not at a human, but that would be hard to pick up on as a child without somebody explaining it to you over and over again.
I would agree with that.
So what else would you say to teachers out there who are really resistant to dipping their toe in the water and testing out this technology?
I don't understand why they would. Like I said, it saves so much time. I'm able to do so much more with my family. I I don't know why you would be so resistant against it. And I really feel like it does help my students. Like I can't come up with 20 guided practice questions for the whole week. I can't do that. But it does. And with all of the budget cuts, I'm like, it's free. It doesn't cost us any money. You're not having to pay for curriculum. And that's one thing I had to do in the past is if our school didn't have enough in the curriculum, I would use teachers pay teachers. And I'm not against that. I really am not. Like other teachers created stuff, but now I can do it for free and I can double check it. And it's not costing me, $10 a week or whatever it would cost me to buy worksheets. I can make my own that are equally as good, if not better. I can even have it do I can have it create an entire reading passage with questions that go with it if I want reading comprehension. So, like, I just don't understand why you'd be so against it to save yourself time and money.
Yeah. I would agree 100%. People are afraid of things they don't understand. I think what I find with tech resistant employees, and it's not really an age thing. It used to be, like it was an age thing, but there are young people who don't want to use this technology. I find in their 20s because they're misinformed on how much water it uses. It really doesn't use that much water. It does use a lot of electricity. There have been human rights things about human factor reinforcement learning using third world countries. We don't do a whole lot of that anymore. Most of that's done by algorithm and pre-training. Now we're paying like PhDs to do human factor reinforcement learning for hundreds of dollars an hour. So half of the things that some of the younger people are upset about, if they were to take a look at TikTok and how much carbon dioxide is put into the environment based on their TikTok use, it's a lot more than what ChatGPT is putting out there. So I can have those conversations with them. But with the people who are resistant because they just don't really like change, what I find is you kind of have to find like their chat GPT moment. You have to find what is the one thing that they hate doing or that they really wish that they could do that AI can do for them. And once they see that magic wand waved in front of them, they're like, wow, that's cool. I wonder what else this could do. And they start to become more curious than resistant.
I was like, and I just feel like in this day and age when everything's so fast paced and we have so much that we fill our schedules with, anywhere I can find moments to save that time, I'm going to use them.
Do you find it's allowed you more time just for one-on-one interaction, like human interaction with your students?
Do you think it's giving me more one on one time with my students, you're
Yeah.
saying?
Do you think that you're spending less time on admin and more time face to face with the kids, or are you spending less time at home on admin and more time with your children? or both?
Um, it probably saves more time with my own kids than students. Where I work, we very much utilize we don't sit down. It's constant circulation, it's constant checking in with kids, it's constant feedback. And so I don't feel like it's necessarily saving me time in my classroom because we use our prep times or other things to do the things we need to do outside of class. We don't grade, we don't do I mean, you literally circulate the whole time. I really love the school I works for, Frameworks, but I will tell you I put in so many steps in a day that I was not getting at schools I worked at prior. And so I was like, wow, the first like week there, I was like, oh my gosh, my feet hurt. So I don't think it necessarily saves time in my classroom because we're very student oriented, but I do think that we save so much more time with my own family here.
Which you deserve. And, I think that's one thing that we've seen taken away from teachers that was kind of a draw to teaching 20 years ago was, evenings and summers you were supposed to have like all this free time to be a mom and get with your kid. My wife was a teacher initially, when we met 15 years ago, and that was why she liked having her summers, but more and more you had to put in time at preparing for the school year and doing all this administrative burden work that it wasn't really panning out that way. And I think that AI can give that back and maybe make teaching a little bit more attractive than it has been. And it also gives ability, to meet students where they are. And I think some of the discipline issues that I would perceive happening in class is when you're trying to reach everybody at a middle level. Well, the kids who can't do the middle level get frustrated because it's too hard for them, and the kids that are way above the middle level are just bored as hell because it's not enough for them. This technology can make it so you can kind of start to meet them a lot closer to where they are and maybe re-engage them.
Yeah, you can definitely tier assignments to different levels. And so you're right in that aspect. There's programs that will actually take your assignment and give you three different levels for the same assignment. So I do agree it would very much come in handy for that as well.
That's awesome. That is awesome. I have one last question for you. That's a hard question I haven't asked an educator yet. I read a book called AI in Healthcare, and it was written by a physician who helped train some of the models that eventually were put together to create ChatGPT. This initial smaller model was called Da Vinci, and it was healthcare oriented. And what he said his fear with this technology is if you take your traditional general practice, like your family doctor, they spend about 7 minutes with every patient, and currently about 4 minutes of that is taking notes, and 3 minutes is talking to the patient. If AI was to, and it can now, take the notes for the doctor, so now they have a full 7 minutes, will the healthcare system ask them to see 1.75 patients every 7 minutes, or will it allow them to actually spend more time interacting with the patient? I have the same fear in education. As this ed tech becomes so empowering for teachers, is the school system going to expect you to handle more children per classroom, or is it actually going to allow you that freed up time to be more human based on lack of admin time?
I think honestly, our classroom sizes are probably larger now than what they were 10 years ago with budget cuts and the lack of teachers. Um, I don't necessarily feel like they'd put more into the classroom. I think it's just going to benefit us, honestly. Like, I can't gauge everybody's reading levels the first week of school. Like, that's really hard for me to do. But if I put them on a program that adjusts based on what they're answering right or wrong, and it tells me exactly how many minutes they spent reading, exactly how many minutes they spent scrolling, it breaks it down into smaller chunks. It's going to only benefit us to know our students better and not necessarily harm them. I just don't think that I think where we're at is probably the max amount of students they're going to put in a classroom. I really do. If you have 27, 28 students, it's just not really feasible to add more. You're running out of classroom space. And they're kids, they're not lecture halls with tons of students. You have to know those students. A lot of teaching, which people don't realize or maybe should realize, is relationship building with those students. And I'm able to understand their home lives or their situations a lot better when I'm not having to give them all of these tests up front and a computer helps gauge it for me. So I think it's actually better at building those relationships with my students, utilizing it because I can see their reading level, their words per minute, the words they struggled on, the questions they got wrong, and it puts it in nice little data blocks for me. I don't have to spend my time analyzing all the data either. It's just right there on a page. It tells me everything I need. And so I can get to know them on a more personal level. And I think that's crucial in teaching is students don't want to learn from someone that they don't like or that they don't think likes them. Like they're just going to push back, push back, push back. But if you built the relationship from the start and they know that you're pushing them because you care about them, they're going to respond entirely different than you're just pushing them because it's your job.
Nobody cares how much you know till they know how much you care.
Yeah, that's 100%. I think that's using AI and using things um like Readworks will tell you exactly how many minutes they spent. Newsela, same thing. I'll tell you how many minutes they spent, how many questions they got wrong. The different programs we use tells exactly what their strengths and deficits are, and we can focus on that and do a lot more individualized plans for them for what they need specifically, and not take away from learning them as people. If that
This
makes
is
sense.
It makes a ton of sense. This has been such an amazing conversation. I can totally see why your husband said that I should talk to you, because you are leading the way. You are utilizing this technology the way that it should be utilized, and you have such a positive message. I cannot thank you enough for joining me today.
Well, thank you for having me. I was a little nervous. I was like, I don't know what to say about AI, but
Well, you articulated everything like a language arts teacher beautifully.
all right. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Patty. I will. I'll let you know when this gets published. It'll be a week from yesterday, so next Saturday this will go out, and maybe we'll have you on again sometime. But definitely keep in touch and let me know when you test out those new platforms. What your thoughts on them are.
Thank you. And sorry for the scheduling mix up as well.
Not a worry at all.
All right.
All
Well,
right.
you have a great day.
You as
Come on,
well.
man. Things just get real. Looks like this dude's riffing on 11 Labs. Is this guy using 11 Labs? And I wonder what model he'll work with next week? Yeah, ride that wave.